Mr. Stroll, wasn't the original intent of the Wilderness Act to include bicycling among the traditional recreational pursuits in wilderness areas?
Well, the original intent, yes, because in 1964, when the Wilderness Act passed, Congress and the President were very, very concerned about the physical fitness of America's youth, and the Soviet threat was ever present.
And the President was very clear that bicycles were among those pursuits that they were seeking to assure people have access to in our public lands.
That is correct. By your own statement, your introductory statement, Mr. Chairman, that's right.
We've heard that bikes cause more damage to the trails than horses. Is that true?
No, it's the opposite. I can describe from personal experience. All visitors to a public lands have some impact, but mountain biking is about the same as hiking and much less destructive than using horses or pack stock trains.
So if we're going to continue to ban bicycles for the fear of the damage they do to our trails, then we certainly should be banning horseback riding as well.
Well, actually, many backpackers would agree with you on that. There's often little love lost between them and the equestrians.
Interesting you mention that, because I remember as a youth being knocked over by a horseback rider on a trail. Didn't hear him coming, and he just ran right beside me and pushed me into the bush there. But that's not an excuse for denying every courteous horseback rider the same access to the public lands as hikers enjoy or as bicyclists used to enjoy until the Forest Service changed this rule.
You're quite correct, Mr. Chairman, and from the fifth slide, I mean, that's an example of how people can get along and regularly do get along.
Has Congress ever voted to ban bicycles from wilderness areas?
No, in fact, the opposite. As you mentioned, in the Rattlesnake Wilderness Act of 1980, that was the one time Congress has ever addressed this issue, and Congress voted to include bicycling as a primitive form of recreation suitable for that wilderness area.
So the ban was strictly imposed by an unelected bureaucrat, is that correct?
Yes.
And what did the author of the Wilderness Act have to say about that?
Well,
I'm referring to Senator Church.
Oh, yes. Well, as we described, he said that the Forest Service, which was the agency that was doing this at the time, had gone completely astray from Congress's intent, and he wasn't the only one. Morris K. Udall, whose portrait hangs in this very room, was similarly sounding alarms in that same year in 1977, saying that the agency was just going off the rails in terms of restricting access to wilderness in a way that Congress never intended.
The whole point of our public lands is so that the American people can enjoy them for use, resort, and recreation for all time, the wording of the original Yosemite Charter of 1864. Is
Yes.
it not?
And of course, wilderness is highly protected, but this is your bill, Mr. Chairman, is such a modest measure. It only allows human-powered travel in an area where Congress always intended human-powered travel. It doesn't open up wilderness to jeeps or ATVs or motorcycles or similar devices.
And horses are not human-powered travel, are they?
That is true. Yes.
Subject for a different day, but the point is that hikers, horseback riders, and bicyclists coexist peacefully on all of our other public lands. Is that correct?
It is. And frankly, the horses get a pass because even though they have a tremendous environmental impact, they're part of the lore of the West. So they're just grandfathered in.
Right.